thanks for joining me today. I would like to talk about the explosive controversy that is in the media right now surrounding President Trump's new so-called zero tolerance policy that was enacted by Attorney General Jeff Sessions in April of this year. Now, what this zero tolerance policy does, in fact, is nothing new. What it's doing is implementing the law as it's currently written, which other administrations did not do to the full extent. But if you were to watch the mainstream media, you would think that Donald Trump, being the evil, horrible racist that he is, was running Nazi-style concentration camps where, immigrant children are being ripped from their families, ripped from their parents' arms, and sent to these Auschwitz-style concentration camps where presumably they're being forced into some sort of slave labor so that we can compete with, with China. I mean, hey, if we're gonna have slave factories making our stuff, we might as well have it made in America, because clearly that's how evil Donald Trump is when he says America first. It's clearly that that is what he must be talking about, something along those lines. And I'm not kidding. The media really has jumped the shark. They really went full. They've really went full Nazi on this one. They violated the one rule, the Goodwin's law, I believe, where if you say that your opponent is a Nazi, you've basically invalidated yourself from any sort of credibility, really. Now, so I want to go to a video from Newsbusters that they put together, showing the mainstream media outlets comparing Donald Trump and the zero tolerance policy to Nazi Germany. So let's roll that.
Well, the images suggest those of concentration camps, families being cut apart.
I know children are being marched away to showers. I know they're being marched away to showers. Or they're being told they are, just like the Nazis had said that they were taking people to showers and then they never came back.
Look, bottom line, Donald Trump increasingly looks like Hitler in Nazi Germany. These look like concentration camps.
It's rewarding breaking our immigration laws.
Unusual punishment, John.
I said this yesterday, but increasingly Donald Trump is turning this nation into Nazi Germany and turning these into concentration camps.
What's happening is very American in that this is how the country was founded. This is what happened 76 years ago to Japanese Americans in internment camps.
Now, look, I know we're not Nazi Germany, all right? But there is a commonality there.
I knew it would be controversial, but I felt a warning flare was necessary.
You're so concerned about what's going on.
Yeah.
And all of us are so concerned. We see these heartbreaking images, and it's so awful.
And this is a policy that is inhumane, indecent, un-American, completely dictatorial. And like I said yesterday, they are the tactics that have been used through history by the worst purveyors of pure evil, including slave traders, including Nazis, including terrorists. And now this great country is using them as well, and we should all be ashamed.
There are commentators like Joe Scarborough bringing up the N-word, Nazi. Doesn't the tone of some of the coverage offend a great deal of Americans who feel that the real scandal is that people are entering the country illegally in the first place?
So that's when you know this is all just ridiculous, when the media tries to say that Donald Trump is literally Hitler. I mean, this isn't the first time we've seen this, and it shows a just extreme level of dishonesty from the mainstream media. And of course, you've got both political parties. You've got people like Nancy Pelosi. You've got people like Paul Ryan, the minority minority leader of the House and Speaker of the House, respectively, the Democrat and Republican leaders of the House, have both come out and condemned this zero tolerance policy. You've seen various other people, members of Congress from both sides of the aisle, come out and say that this policy is bad, that it should be taken back. And, you know, it's, I think, obvious to a lot of people, but the people in both political parties, the vast majority of them, they don't actually care about illegal immigrants. They don't care really about illegal immigrants at all, beyond the extent that they can actually be politically expedient for them. So people like Paul Ryan, they want to keep borders open because they want to be able to have cheap labor. With the Democrats, they want to keep the borders open because they want to have potential votes in the future. And really, if you think it's anything beyond that, I've got a bridge to sell you. But I want to go through the facts, and I want to lay out the case of what exactly is going on with this policy and why it is nowhere near Nazi Germany. So I would like to start with a piece from Business Insider where they pointed out that Jon Favreau, this guy, Jon Favreau, he was a staffer for the Obama administration, actually a speechwriter. Now, this guy tweeted in May, I believe, a month ago, that the Trump administration was putting illegal immigrant children in cages, locking them up. Oh, how horrible. Oh, how cruel. And he actually, amazingly, now remember, this guy worked for the Obama administration. This guy amazingly tweeted out a picture of children in a processing facility, a Customs and Border Protection processing facility, where these kids were being basically detained. Now, it turns out that picture was actually from 2014, during the Obama administration. Well, people on social media, of course, took him to task, and he had to come out and say that, oh, it was a mistake, I didn't check the date. And then he went on to explain how it's totally different, don't you understand, than what's happening right now. So what that illustrates is clearly the insane double standard that there is for these types of situations. The media, when this was happening in 2014, when these children were being detained in these very same facilities, they really didn't care. They didn't give a damn. Why? Because it was happening under Barack Obama. Now it's happening under Donald Trump, so it's, you know, clearly the most nefarious, evil, Nazi-like behavior that the world has ever seen. So what's happening now that's different than what was happening in previous administrations? Like I said, the law is the same. The law is just now actually being followed. What's happening now is everybody who is caught crossing the border under the zero tolerance policy is prosecuted. Before the zero tolerance policy, there were exceptions given to people in certain circumstances. Namely, if you came across the border and you had children, if you were part of a family unit, as it's called, you would have a exception under previous administrations, particularly the Obama administration. And generally, you would get released. Basically, you'd get detained, and then you would get released with a pending court date, and they would just expect you. Now, mind you, you just crossed the border illegally, and you get detained for however long it was, usually a matter of days, and then you get released and told to come back later for your court date. Yeah, as if. So, it turns out that didn't really work out too well. So what's happening now is everybody who crosses the border illegally, including people who are part of a family unit, are being prosecuted. They are being detained. There are certain rules in place that don't allow the government to hold children for more than 20 days. And I'm going to get into all of this in detail. I just want to kind of lay a little bit of the groundwork before I go into this next CNN article where I'm going to detail one of these horrible, evil, Nazi-like concentration camps that these children are being held at. Now, keep in mind that picture that was tweeted by Jon Favreau, the Obama administration staffer. That picture was showing the very same processing center as is now. These are the very same processing centers that were under Obama that are now under Trump. These processing centers are very temporary situations that these children are put in. They are still basically under, with the Border Patrol at this point, and they're at these detention centers. And very shortly, within a matter of, days or less even, they're sent to Health and Human Services, which has shelters set up for them. If that they stay in until they can find either a relative who lives in the United States, or some sort of a foster situation, or they may have to stay for an extended period of time at one of the shelters. The point is, they're not staying in the cages at the Border Patrol Processing Center. Those are places that are completely overwhelmed and were set up, haphazardly in a short period of time to deal with a crisis-like situation. And it's just insane and so disingenuous for the media to come out and try to pretend like this is somehow something horrible and evil that Donald Trump is doing, especially when they didn't give a damn when it was happening under Obama. So now to CNN, where we're going to go to one of these horrible, evil, Auschwitz-like detention centers. So, from CNN, this details the CNN was allowed to go into a former Walmart in Texas that was turned into a center for these immigrants, for these immigrant children. Now, there are, in this particular center, 1,469 boys aged 10 to 7 housed inside the 2,500 square foot shell of a former Walmart superstore. Okay, so now I'm going to play some pictures. I'm going to show some pictures of this evil Auschwitz-like Nazi detention center where these poor children are ripped from their parents and thrown into. And I'm going to read some of the description from this, again, CNN article, and I want you to decide for yourself if you think these are Nazi-like detention centers. In recreation rooms, some boys watched a soccer match on TV. Some took part in a Tai Chi class. Others played pool or foosball, in one case with a cue ball. Still others sat in classrooms. Because of the crowding, the boys attend school in 6-hour morning or afternoon shifts, 5 days a week. The bedrooms, reporters were shown, seemed antiseptically clean. Though they have a variety of scheduled activities to keep them busy, the boys spend almost all their time indoors at the former superstore, aside from 1 hour a day outside for PE and another hour of free time they can spend on basketball courts or soccer fields adjacent to the shelter building. Many of the boys stared at the visitors with obvious curiosity, greeting reporters with "Hola" or "Buenas tardes" as they walked by. It goes on. There are several banks of telephones at the shelter. Hinojosa said that the children, he's one of the people who are running this facility, said that children at the shelter were able to call their families, and that Southwest Key Programs, as part of its intake process, works to find out how to get in touch with family members. Parents held in immigration and customs enforcement facilities may not have phone access or be reachable, he acknowledged, but said that, quote, a majority of separated children have other family here that they can call. So, these kids are held at these horrible, Auschwitz, Nazi-like concentration camps. While they're, playing, PlayStation, watching TV, doing Tai Chi, and playing pool. Yeah, sounds real horrible. Sounds just absolutely awful. And listen, I'm not saying these places are the nicest facilities in the world. They don't look wonderful, but they're not concentration camps. And the idea that the media would go that far just really shows, and I hope people can understand, how crazy they've gone. So now I want to play a video of the DHS Secretary Nielsen, the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristen Nielsen, who was grilled unfairly by the press at a press conference, which, I mean, they're not the press. They're just a gaggle of hyenas trying to, viciously attack whoever they can to score political points. It's truly sickening. But anyways, I want to play a video of her answering a question from some stupid reporter, where he says, "How is this not child abuse?"
Yes. How is this not child abuse?
Which, be more specific, please. Enforcing the
The
law?
images that Cecilia was talking about and the sounds that we've seen from these big box stores, the Walmarts, the other stores, when you see this, how is this not specifically child abuse for these innocent children who are indeed being separated from their parents?
So I want to be clear on a couple other things. The vast majority of children who are in the care of HHS right now, 10,000 of the 12,000, were sent here alone by their parents. That's when they were separated. So somehow we've conflated everything, but there's two separate issues. 10,000 of those currently in custody were sent by their parents with strangers to undertake a completely dangerous and deadly travel alone. We now care for them. We have high standards. We give them meals. We give them education. We give them medical care. There's videos. There's TVs. I visited the detention centers myself. That would be my answer to that question.
So she goes on to make a great point, and this is something that cannot be stressed enough. The vast majority of these children that are at these facilities are children that are unaccompanied. They are unaccompanied minors, and like she said, the vast majority of them are unaccompanied minors, meaning that's when they got separated from their parents, because their parents gave their children, sold their children to human traffickers, or they were gathered by human traffickers. But in many of the cases, parents are actually giving their children to human traffickers, paying for them to be taken into the United States. And the reason that they're doing this is because they think that they can actually get, through chain migration, that they can, if they can get their child into the United States, that will eventually mean that they can come into the United States. So these children are selling these parents are selling their children to human traffickers who smuggle them, all the way to the border. These are vicious, ruthless cartel members that are taking these children across, however many miles it varies case to case, and dropping them off, almost 100 miles away from the border, where they could be swooped up by other human traffickers who could do God knows what to them. The vast majority of the children, especially the females, that take this very dangerous journey with these human traffickers, who again are not nice people, are raped. And we know this from many different statistics. These children are raped by these disgusting human beings, these human traffickers, that their parents, again, gave them to. Okay? So all this talk about separating children from their parents, okay, that's when the children were really separated from their parents. And the reason that they're doing this is because they think there's an incentive to do so. Because of, among other things, the Obama administration and their extremely loose policies towards our southern border. So they've created, there's this incentive has been created for people to have children and come across the border with them. Just putting these children, again, in horrific danger. And I want to go back to the article I was just reading from CNN, talking about this center where these children are being held in Texas. From October through May, the Border Patrol apprehended 32,000 unaccompanied minors, up about 1,300 from a year earlier. Meanwhile, apprehensions of, quote, family units, as the agency calls children traveling with parents, fell 59,113, down nearly 2,000 from the previous year. So that shows that as more children are coming unaccompanied across the border, less are actually coming with their actual parents. And there's no outrage in the media or elsewhere, geared towards these parents, where it actually should be. 70% of the 5,129 children at Southwest Key Program shelters were unaccompanied. 70%. Rather than separated from their parents. So the reason that there has been, again, as I've said, this massive influx because this is a fairly new phenomenon. All these massive waves of children, unaccompanied and otherwise, coming to our southern border. Usually, before the last decade, really, or less even, since really 2014. Before that, it was mainly adult males coming by themselves trying to cross the border, obviously looking for economic opportunities. Well, in 2014, an influx of unaccompanied minors from Central and South America actually wound up basically swarming our country. And again, this was during the Obama administration. And Cecilia Munoz, who served as the director of the White House Domestic Policy Center, had this to say to NPR. In 2014, we saw an enormous spike compared to what usually happens every year in the number of kids crossing alone into the United States, she said. And we didn't have enough shelter facilities because we had a huge increase, so kids ended up piling up in border lockups, which are no place for children. So she's referencing those the Border Patrol facilities that old Jon Favreau tweeted his picture out about, mistakenly thinking that was happening, that it was during the Trump administration, even though it was the same exact facilities that were in operation during the Obama administration and were used during the Obama administration. She goes on, what the Obama administration did, which is what the law requires, is to find shelter facilities for those kids, which were put together by the Department of Health and Human Services. So the goal was to get kids out of Border Patrol and into proper care by HHS. And then HHS is supposed to release them into the least restrictive setting, and in more than 80% of the cases, that was with their parents who were already in the United States. So this is the procedure. This is how this goes when the parents and child, the family unit, gets apprehended at the border. They go first to the processing center, then the parent generally stays, and the kid or children go to the one of the Health and Human Services shelters. Now, what Obama was doing is, when these people were filing for claiming asylum, which generally takes a good period of time to actually verify that there is an actual credible threat that these people are escaping from and that they should be able to be granted asylum in the United States. Politico points out, prior to the surge of unaccompanied children crossing the border in 2014, both the Bush and Obama administrations detained families together in federal detention centers for months at a time. But, and this is so key, in 2015, a California federal district judge ruled that families could not be detained for more than 20 days, and children could not be held in federal jails. Previously, only unaccompanied minors could not be held in jail. And this wasn't just any court that decided this. This was actually the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, a, by any account, far left-leaning liberal judge that made this decision, or a court that made this decision. And what the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals did is it basically extended what's called the Flores Consent Decree, which was a decree from 1997 that originally stated that only unaccompanied minors could not be held by the Border Patrol, basically, for more than 20 days. They extended that to say that any child, whether they're unaccompanied or not, cannot be held in detention for more than 20 days. So before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals came out with this ruling, the Obama administration was holding families in detention centers, again, for months at a time, like Politico pointed out. The Trump administration, because of this ruling, cannot do that. They would do that if they could, but they can't. They would do the exact same thing that the Obama administration was doing if they could, but again, they can't. And Teresa Cardinal Brown, who is the director of immigration policy at the Bipartisan Policy Center, had this to say about the Obama policy after the 2015 ruling. Quote, left with the choice of do we release the family or do we separate them, the Obama administration, chose in most cases not to separate them, but to release them. Brown also said that until the zero-tolerance policy was enacted, the Trump administration released most families unless it suspected trafficking or if a parent had a criminal conviction. Okay, so Trump was doing the exact same thing that Obama was doing, still implementing the catch and release policy that violated the law, releasing these people with their children because they couldn't hold them into the United States. Just without these people would get detained at the border. They would have they would be processed. They would generally be charged with time served, which crossing the border is a misdemeanor. You can be charged up to 6 months in jail for it. They get charged time served, and then they generally seek asylum, which is a process that takes quite a bit longer. And at that point, the only thing that they can do is to separate the children from the family. If we're going to hold them for the entire process of them appealing for asylum, because of the 2015 ruling by the liberal Ninth Circuit, Trump cannot hold them. The only option is to let them into the country with their child while their appeal for asylum is still pending, and then give them a court date to come back and expect that they're actually going to come back. It's just ridiculous. It makes a mockery of our laws, and it makes an incentive for people to send their children along this dangerous journey where they're likely to get, killed or raped or God knows what. Now, when Donald Trump took office, after he took office, the amount of people crossing the border dropped dramatically because of the rhetoric from the Trump administration. Everyone was expecting that the wall was going to get built. Everyone was expecting, there to be just a massive increase in protection at the border and apprehension of people illegally crossing the border. So what we saw is Border Patrol apprehensions at the U.S.-Mexico border declined 60% from November 2016 to February 2017. And again, that was because of the rhetoric. President Trump came out, and he said, look, we'll pass a bill. We'll pass a bill for immigration. We will streamline the path to citizenship. We need to get rid of the immigration lottery, the visa lottery system. We need to get rid of the chain migration system. We need to end the catch and release policy. And I will basically legalize all the people under DACA, and including family members of theirs. And that he would also work to basically streamline the immigration process. Now, the Democrats didn't want none of that. The Democrats don't actually want to solve the problem of an open border. Again, they want the border to stay wide open. They want to pretend like they're the hero to these immigrants when they're really just, enabling this behavior that is destructive to the immigrants that are attempting to come across. And they don't want to actually solve the problem. And they passed on that deal. Now, because of all this, we haven't really got any increase in funding for the border. We haven't begun building the wall, and people have noticed. So what happened, as you'd expect, it started to go back up. It started to go way back up. And then according to the DHS press secretary, we saw a 203% increase from March 2017 compared to March 2018. A 203% increase, and a 37% increase from last month to this month. The largest increase from month to month since 2011. So people have realized that despite the rhetoric from the new administration, it's more or less still the same, especially since they still had the catch and release was still happening and these immigration deals fell through. It didn't look like there, still is, it's in question as to what level of border security we're really going to get and at what point. But again, the number of people crossing the border wound up surging, and it's gotten to the point now where we've got thousands and thousands and thousands of children, many of them, most of them, unaccompanied, crossing the border, and again, having to do this via human traffickers who are some of the worst scumbags on earth, who put these children into sex trafficking, who rape them themselves, who wind up killing them in some cases. Just horrible experiences that these children have to go through because of the perverse incentives that are put in place by hack politicians like Nancy Pelosi and hack politicians like Paul Ryan, who for years have done their best to keep the border as porous and unprotected as possible. So what we know is that the resurgence of the border crossings, so in other words, the fact that the border crossings went down so much and then went way back up, that shows that this is actually economic migration, not people legitimately seeking asylum in many of the cases. If people were legitimately seeking asylum, running away from persecution, meaning they were going to be killed in their country of origin and they were not safe anywhere else but the United States, they would still be trying to go to the United States regardless, but they're not. They're economic migrants, meaning they're trying to come here because this country is better off economically and it would be a better country for them to live in. No one's arguing that point, but we can't just accept everybody who wants to come into this country just because they would like to be here. Especially when you've got this insane open border policy. Now, obviously, the open borders mean rape, they mean human trafficking, and they mean an extremely dangerous journey, which is a journey that mostly unaccompanied, quote unquote, unaccompanied minors wind up going on. Will you see the media blame the parents who give their kids up to coyotes, human smugglers? No, you're not. All you're going to see them doing is trying to score political points by calling Donald Trump a Nazi. With that being said, it is not helpful when you have, for instance, the Attorney General Jeff Sessions coming out and, smiling while he's talking about how, this is a policy that is going to deter families, people from crossing the border, and reading Bible verses and doing all sorts of weird stuff like that. It's not good to have John Kelly coming out and talking about how they're implementing this specifically to deter people from coming across the border. Yes, and following the law is going to deter people from coming across the border, but you don't need to say that that's why you're doing it, that you're splitting parents up from their children just strictly as a form of deterrence, not because it's the law and we're just following the law. That's a little gross. That's wrong. You shouldn't be coming out and saying stuff like that. That just, the optics of that are obviously horrible. The moral implications of that are not good either. And finally, the Washington Examiner reports that Senate Majority Whip John Cornyn and Senator Ted Cruz, both Republicans of Texas, have proposed legislation that would allow children to remain at detention centers with their parents and would speed up the adjudication with the help of additional immigration judges. So basically it would overrule the 2015 ruling by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals that says that children and parents can't be held in detention together. And this is the answer. This is the only real solution at this point, is to make that a reality, is to make it to where children don't have to be separated from their parents, to where they can be held at detention centers. No, not the cages of the Border Patrol processing facilities, the same kind of facilities that Barack Obama was holding families in before 2015. And again, there's a bill now being introduced to do just this. But are the Democrats going to go for it? Of course they're not, because they don't want to solve the illegal immigrant crisis. They want to exasperate it because it's a win-win for them. Either they get to keep their open borders and their potential prospects for future voters in the illegal immigrants that they champion, and also they get to call Trump an evil, inhumane Nazi. So it's really a twofold victory for them to not try to progress and actually find a solution to this issue. And to that effect, Chuck Schumer actually came out and said, the Senate Minority Leader, quote, "Let's hope we never get to that. Let's hope we never get to that." It's talking about the actual legislative fix, the actual bill to fix this problem. Let's hope we never get to that. Let's hope the president does the right thing and solves the problem, which he can do, Schumer says. That's the simplest, easiest, and most likely way this will happen. And what he means by that, of course, is to continue to not enforce the law, and to continue the laws that were passed by Congress, by the way, to not enforce those laws, and to just allow people to come here with their children and then be released into the United States. A policy that causes a perverse incentive for human trafficking, and a perverse incentive for people to try to violate our laws. It's really, it just makes a mockery of our laws. I mean, if that's the law, it needs to be followed. And the simple fact that Chuck Schumer's coming out and saying that let's hope we never fix, I mean, he just admitted it, let's hope we never get to that. Let's hope we never actually fix this problem. Let's keep the borders wide open. Let's keep allowing people to come into this country illegally, and let's release them with a court date and just hope that they come back. Just truly, truly disgusting. So I've been, as you can probably tell, a little upset the last couple of days over the just insane level of hypocrisy, the double standards coming from the media, coming from the swamp politicians, coming from even people I would consider to be fairly conservative. So many people are folding to this, folding to the pressure, and folding to the fake, bogus narrative by the Democrats that this is some horrible, heartless, cruel policy enacted by the Trump administration to target and harm illegal immigrant children. I mean, it's just crazy that the media has gone to this level, that they are willing to just completely throw away any sense of credibility, any sense of decency, really. So I really hope this was informative to you. I really hope that this can help you to sort through the facts and be able to make your own decision, come to your own conclusions, to actually have sort of this situation presented to you in a way that is a more full explanation than I believe you've probably got from some other people in the media. So again, I hope this was helpful to you. And this is a mess. What's going on at the border is absolutely a mess. And really the way to fix it is for Congress to take action. But unfortunately, with people like Chuck Schumer, it seems like that might not be a possibility. So definitely a sad day. It's sad for the families, the children especially. It's just horrifying what happens to the children. So with that, again, I hope this was informative. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you would be so inclined, please leave a comment. Let me know what you thought about this video. Let me know about other topics you'd like me to discuss in the future, perhaps. And maybe leave a like, perhaps, or something of the sort. Share it with your friends. And if you'd like to visit my social media, my Twitter account, I will have a link to that, as well as a link to the audio version of this that I will have uploaded on SoundCloud. So, with that, I hope you have a wonderful day, and may the Force be with you.